Good evening, colleagues, again. I think this is a time we can start now. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself, for I believe we have met with most of you. I can see very familiar names. But for everyone, I'm just Ermias Tarafa. I'm a pharmacist, I'm a pharmacologist, and I'm an assistant professor of pharmacology and therapeutics at USIU. And also, I'm a co-founder and lead trainer at Axumia Global Learning Solution, AGLS. Today, we are giving this briefing webinar on what the global regulatory affairs space looks like. We have different experts, which are the trainers for our global regulatory affairs new brand training. Before we start the training and before I introduce different facilitators on board, allow me to take you through just to give an overall introduction on what we are doing at AGLS. I'll not speak much, but I'll just share our website, which you will get it also later on the link and you can browse. AGLS is established by a team of different experts from here and across the globe, basically with a vision of really building capacity and also to really work in the human resource for health space. We do provide a number of short course trainings and also a research advisory support, grant writing, and the like. Heavily now we are engaged in grants because, as you know, professional development comes with heavy costs, and that cost for health professionals will be a lot. So we are really looking with different partners. We're having different discussions on a way we can get grants to support lifelong learning. As you know, as professionals, one of our call is to have a lifelong learning path so that will be updated and will be geared on what is upcoming things and to the new dynamics. So you can see the detail about us here in our page, but briefly I would like to talk on the different courses we have and how we plan and curate our courses. We really spend heavy time and resource in terms of developing our programs and our curriculum. I believe if some of you had the chance to enroll into one of our programs, like recently we finished the diabetes mellitus training, and now we are having the hypertension training. These are all our trainings are heavily planned. Not only that, we are so keen in our trainers. We believe in training health professionals with highly trained and qualified facilitators. That is why all our facilitators have a minimum master's or PhD, or they are seasoned practitioners. All you can see, like Dr. Gugi, Professor Fred Bukachi, which are the lead trainers in hypertension and diabetes training. So all our facilitators in the different area are experts, which you can mention in the region as experts in the subject matter area. That feels myself of big proud on being part of the AGLS team. And also, when we talk today, bringing for you this global regulatory affairs training, which I'll explain later on at the end, after the experts talk the different aspects, you can also see how the trainings are well planned. You hope you know the health supply chain management, our Court 3, our on session, and that is one of flagship program we have, and it's an amazing. One of the training we have, which is of the first in kind in the region, is the veterinary pharmacy training. Last year, we've trained quite a number of pharmacy professionals in that space, so that we are now changing the dynamic, the tone. We have seen the different perspective, and we believe this training, hope we'll have it soon, and that will also change the space. So also soon we are having we are working with different humanitarian organizations, and we'll have also, we believe this is an area where pharmacy professionals can heavily venture, which is the humanitarian medical supply chain. You can look at it, what it is in there. and our new brand curriculum is the global regulatory affairs, and later on I will talk about it. So that is in brief what we are doing, and we are so grateful that you have joined today to hear from us on what this global regulatory affairs entails. In today's discussion, we'll try to mention quite a number of things, and we have speakers, and we'll have different topics for the discussion. We'll try last week. Remember, this is a continuation of what we discussed last week. Last week, we've discussed on among the pointers we discussed, we've mentioned regarding understanding regulatory affairs. Okay, and Dr. Eva Maina has done a very interesting presentation showing us overview of the regulatory requirements across the different regions in these regions. And also, you remember Dr. Simon Mungai from Lab and Allied Company Pharmacist. He also talked on why regulatory affair matters, okay, and the roles of regulatory professionals. And finally, last week, Dr. Bina Mahinda from Cosmos also talked on the different career pathways in regulatory affairs. And it was an excellent presentation. We'll share the recording via your email when we share your CPD tokens. So remember, this is a CPD accredited program. Make sure you subscribe on the PPB portal. Today we have different speakers, including we'll start to listen from Dr. Maureen Jeru, from an expert working in the Pharmacy and Poisons Board in Medical Device Registration Department. I believe she'll be able to tell us, to introduce herself very well. Last week, she had introduced regarding regulatory affairs for medical devices. And then also we'll have a talk on strengthening regulatory compliance, regulatory affairs for veterinary products, and also on pharmacovigilance and post-marketing surveillance. So we have different speakers. I will take a minimum of like 10 minutes to brief what those areas entails. These different areas are part and part of the different modules that will be covered in our upcoming 10 weeks of global regulatory affairs training. What makes our training unique, which I'll talk later on, will be the experiential training. And this training will have a 20 days of hands-on practical during the different stakeholders engagement we had when we start planning of this training. One thing that come out bold and clear was the hands-on expertise of practitioners who are planning to engage or who are engaging in this regulatory space from among the many tasks they perform, including the dossier preparation, regulatory submission. Many of the employers mentioned the lack of hands-on skill. That is why today I will talk about our partnerships we have with Lab and Allied and IVCA Consultancy, which will be our experiential training sites. But also, as we discussed, we are also expanding our training sites, which we'll also announce as we move on. At this point, allow me to invite Dr. Maureen Jiro to take us through regulatory affairs in medical devices. Maureen, hope you are there. Maureen Jiro.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Very well and clear. Please proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maureen Jiro, an Assistant Regulatory Officer at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. I deal in the division of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. I am a graduate in biomedical science and technology and a certified regulatory officer. So I know for medical devices, there's a lot to talk about. I feel like 10 minutes is quite too small, but we are going to minimize the 10 minutes. So I'm going to start the presentation. Let me share the screen. Yes. Yeah. Regulatory affairs in medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. So today I'm going to focus on the regulatory aspects in medical devices in Kenya. So these are the outlines. We are going to give a brief introduction on the regulatory aspects in medical devices, the legal frameworks, the definition and classification of medical devices, the procedures that we undertake in registering medical devices and IVDs, the milestones, challenges, the prospective initiatives that we have made, and the summary. So regulatory affairs play a crucial role in ensuring the safety, efficacy, and quality of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. The primary purpose of Pharmacy and Poisons Board is to protect the public health by ensuring that these products meet established standards before entering the market. This is achieved through rigorous evaluation processes, compliance with legal requirements, and ongoing monitoring of products post-market. Effective regulation also supports innovation while minimizing potential risks, ensuring that the medical devices and IVDs contribute positively to the healthcare system. When it comes to the legal framework, the marketing authorization of medical devices and IVDs is strongly anchored in Cap 244 and the Pharmacy and Poisons Rule, where we are given the legal authority to regulate health products and technologies. The definitions of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, I captured this from WHO. Medical devices in an article, instrument, apparatus, or machine that is used in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of illnesses or diseases, or for detecting, measuring, restoring, correcting, or modifying the structure or function of the body for some health purpose. Typically, the purpose of a medical devices is not achieved by a pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means. It also goes to differentiate between a medical device and a medical equipment. A medical equipment is a medical device requiring calibration, maintenance, repair, user training, and decommissioning activities usually managed by the clinical engineer. So all medical equipment are medical devices. Not all medical devices are medical equipment. In vitro diagnostics, the IVDs, these are tests that can detect disease, conditions, and infection. But in vitro just simply means in glass, meaning these tests are typically conducted in test tubes and similar equipment as opposed to in vivo tests, which are conducted in the body itself. So any diagnostics kit done outside the body, we put it as in vitro diagnostics. The classification of medical devices. According to our guidelines, we classify medical devices on risk basis, which depends on the intended purpose and the user, the duration of medical device contact with the body, the degree of invasiveness, whether the medical device deliver medicinal product or energy to the patient, whether they are intended to have a biological effect on the patient, and local versus systemic effect. These are the special medical devices. So, having said that, what are the classification of medical devices? We have Class A, which are low-risk medical devices. We have Class B, low-moderate risk. Class C, moderate or high risk. Class D, high-risk medical devices. On the classification of IVDs, the in vitro diagnostics classification is also similar. We have Class A, B, C, and D, but the rationale of classification is quite different from the medical devices. For the IVDs, we look at these three factors. Of course, we have to look at the intended use and the indication. We also need to see the technical, scientific, or medical expertise of the intended user. This now we talk about the lay person or the professional. because we find that there are some in vitro diagnostics that are used by the lay person, people who have no scientific or medical expertise. So there are some factors to consider during evaluation of this IVD. Something like instruction for use, it has to be very detailed and very simple and can be followed. And then we also check the importance of the information to the diagnosis. That is sole determinant or one of several, taking into consideration the natural history of the disease or disorder, including presenting signs and symptoms which may guide the physician, the impact of the results to the individual and to the public health. This is the most important criteria that we use, the individual health risk and the public health risk. Having said that, what are the classification of in vitro diagnostics? We have class A. These are low individual risk and low public health risk. We have class B, the moderate individual risk and or low public health risk. We go to class C, high individual risk or moderate public health risk, and class D, high individual risk and high public health risk. Unlike the medical devices where we just look at which is risk-based classification, for the IVDs we look at the impact of the test to the individual health and the public health. What are the procedures that are undertaken when granting marketing authorization to these medical devices and IVDs? So the first step is first determine if the product is a medical device or an IVD. Does it fit in the definition of a medical device? Once that is determined, then we go to the submission of application, where the applicant submits the required documentation through our online system. Once the applicant has submitted, the application undergoes screening, where we check if the documents have been uploaded. And after screening, that's when we now we review the documentation that has been attached, where we check the assessment of the device design, clinical data if applicable, risk analysis, manufacturing process, and verification that the device has been manufactured in accordance to ISO 13483 standards. This is standard specifically for the manufacturing of medical devices. For products that need testing and evaluation, we also require that they bring samples for performance testing and biocompatibility testing in our referral accredited labs. For example, the blood bags we always require for the samples, and various test kits such as Mpox kits and the COVID-19 kits. Once the evaluation is done and the product is fit to be safe and efficacious, we grant the approval. If there are any clarification or missing documents or maybe clarity on to submit some various documentation that is applicable, we query the applicant. So all this procedure is done in our online system, where we communicate with the applicant through our portal. What are the milestones that we have achieved so far when it comes to regulation of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics? Number one, we have ensured that close to all medical devices in the Kenyan market have been registered. And number two, we have been doing the monitoring of these medical devices and IVD in the market through post-marketing surveillance and vigilance, where we mandate the manufacturers and distributors to report adverse effects and also to submit field safety corrective actions. Of course, there will be challenges. Number one, we have the resource and capacity constraints. We lack the specialized personnel to assess complex medical technology. We also have inadequate funding, where we have budgetary constraints that affect the efficiency of regulatory agency in enforcing compliance. We are also facing the challenges of the lack of awareness among the stakeholders. You can see in the medical devices, we have a lot of stakeholders, and ensuring that they are all aware about the regulatory space in medical devices and IVD becomes a challenge. We also have a challenge where there's rapid advancement in medical technology. The regulations struggle to keep pace with innovation like AI-driven diagnostics. What is the way forward? We are aiming to start the registration of manufacturing site locally and the foreign manufacturing site. So far, we have inspected 2 local manufacturing sites, and we are aiming to start the inspection of the manufacturing sites which are outside the country. We are also planning to start reliance. We are having the guidelines where we are going to collaborate as an IMDRF member, that is International Medical Device Regulatory Forum, and MDSAP member, that is Medical Device Single Audit Partnership membership. We are aiming to start the reliance where we are going to rely on the reports that are submitted through the audits of the inspections. We are also aiming to do regional joint work sharing, where now we are not going to be doing full evaluation, but we are also going to rely on the regulatory decisions that have been made by the recognized stringent regulatory authorities. We are also aiming to broaden medical device registration, where now we are going to incorporate the AI, the software associated medical devices, and others. We aim to revise our guidelines very soon, and we are hoping that we are going to engage as many stakeholders as possible and give their input on how we are going to incorporate the regulation of AI, software associated medical devices, and other emerging technologies. In conclusion, regulatory affairs for medical devices and in vitro diagnostics in Kenya play a crucial role in ensuring the safety, efficacy, and quality of this product for public health. The Pharmacy and Poisons Board, as the national regulatory authority, continues to enhance its regulatory frameworks, streamline approval processes, and strengthen post-marketing surveillance to align with the international best practices. Strengthening stakeholder collaboration and capacity building will be key in ensuring timely access to high quality, safe, and effective medical devices and IVDs in Kenya. These are my references. We have our PPD guidelines for registration of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. We also rely on the WHO guidelines, especially for in vitro diagnostics. We also have our recognized reference regulatory authority like USFDA and Health Science Authority Singapore. Regulatory affairs in medical devices is very broad. I was really trying to compress that in only 16 slides, but I'm sure we are going to talk more when it comes to, I'm sure that the module 10, medical devices regulation, and we are going to talk more and engage more when it comes to regulatory affairs in medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this. I hope we get more. Dr. Ermias?
Thank you. Thank you, Jiro. That was amazing presentation. And I can imagine how you really compressed this big concept and big area of practice in regulatory affairs. I really appreciate you. I believe colleagues, we can give a coffee to Maureen. That is well job well done. If you have any question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm sure some questions we'll be able to answer them. We're trying to give a small snapshot of what the upcoming big training will look like. And in the meantime, also, we are trying to build share some knowledge and expertise in that area from the experts in the space. The next on the speaker list is...
It's an SUV. No, babe, you'd like... Babe, do not say no.
Sorry. So next I'll invite Dr. Nelson Odhiambo. I don't know if Dr. is there. Last week, you remember Dr. Nelson had talked briefly. Dr. Nelson, are you there?
Yeah, Dr. Edmonds, I'm here.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. for getting that time from your busy schedule. I believe you'll try to introduce yourself again to the crowd today. And colleagues, Dr. Nelson is among the most senior pharmacists in the country and in this regulatory space. And it's a great proud and privilege to have him on board as facilitator to guide us on how best we curate this training. He is so passionate about how this regulatory space should look like, how pharmacy professionals should engage at higher caliber and professionalism in this space. So we have invited him today to talk on strengthening regulatory compliance from active pharmaceutical ingredient to finished products. Doctor, the floor is yours, and thank you very much. Karibu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elmias. One thing I don't know, I don't think I'm one of the senior guys. Unless, Doctor, you have what we call seniorometer. I can measure the level. And we will want you to calibrate that seniorometer in the context of regulatory affairs. Yeah, so I think if you allow me, I can share just a small. I just prepared some 2-3 slides to guide what I would like to say for the intention of today's meeting. Can I share?
Yes, Doc, you can share.
Yeah. Don't know whether this is the screen I would like to share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Doc, we can see clearly.
Yeah, I think I'll be very brief and just speak that as the doctor who has just spoken from the regulatory perspective has literally highlighted everything, what it entails in this regulatory space. I just want to underscore one important thing, that the main reason why the regulatory system exists, especially in the context of Kenya and this region, is that we are dealing with generic products that must demonstrate some level of pharmaceutical equivalence with the innovators. And this is majorly the bulk of where the bulk of pharmaceutical manufacturers in Kenya belong, and most of the third world. And in this context, we normally deal with the background that we are having multi-source products that must have a good quality, and at least they are safe and efficacious, and they are comparable or interchangeable with each other, as well as with the innovator products. So that is a very basic philosophy that the regulator exists to ensure there are systems to ensure that the quality of the products are meeting those basic criteria. And in addition to that, also meeting the requirements of marketing authorizations, which we are going to see just in a few slides. So when we talk about products which are from multi-sources, like let's say, let me give a basic product like ibuprofen tablets. How do we ensure that ibuprofen tablet from company A can give the same therapeutic outcomes as ibuprofen from company B, and so on and so on? So the companies are expected to demonstrate that these two products have same safety, they have same efficacy, and their quality is comparable to a competitor. In this case, a competitor can be an innovator product or a suitable comparator as per the guideline for using the comparator, and it should not in any way demonstrate that it is inferior in any of the critical quality attributes. So where do we demonstrate this? This must be demonstrated in the dossier that we submitted to the regulator that must demonstrate this pharmaceutical equivalence. And it has got several components. Today, we shall just get an overview of the API and how it contributes to this demonstration of safety, efficacy, and quality. As the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. If you do not ensure that the sources of your API will guarantee the safety, will guarantee the efficacy, and will guarantee the quality of the product, that is where now we as a country, we are determined whether we are a stringent regulatory authority that can establish, can assess that perspective, or we are not stringent to be able to do that. So in the WHO, there is what you call a manual called the Blue Book that gives how the guidelines for this interchangeability should be assessed. And it will talk about certain parameters which we will mention now when we start the real training and how to demonstrate them. That alone should give people the impetus to join this course, because a lot of time we get queries because we did not demonstrate bioequivalence, we did not demonstrate sufficient comparative dissolution profiles with a suitable comparator. So that if you fail to do that, then you get the query. So in the whole concept of trying to demonstrate from generic multi-sources, you are required to demonstrate pharmaceutical equivalence, which basically means same amount of same API, same dosage form, meet the same comparable standards, and they are also administered by the same route. For example, I cannot start comparing the comparative dissolution of something which is meant to be for oral to that which is meant to be for topical. The same way we cannot give a comparative dissolution with a capsule 2 milligrams with a tablet 2 milligrams. So they must be in the same dosage form. So the aspect of demonstrating interchangeability is very important. And this starts by getting the right API in a manner which you are going to just look at an overview. But during the training, we spend a lot of time trying to expose how all these parameters do come. Therefore, when we talk about strengthening regulatory compliance with the specific objective that you are giving an assurance that the product quality, efficacy, and safety are comparable to the competitor, the leading brand or the innovator product, and also meet the conditions of the marketing authorization. In this whole thing we call strengthening regulatory compliance, it just means the following: that throughout the value chain, the company, the applicant must demonstrate that the regulatory system must demonstrate that there is existence of legislations and a policy framework that governs or guides throughout the entire value chain. When I say the value chain, I mean from sourcing to pre-qualification of the supplier and the raw materials and excipients, all the way to how they are stored, all the way to the manufacturing operations, to the release into the market and post-marketing activities pharmacovigilance activities. So if the country is found to be deficient in the legislation and the policy framework, that is when you find that the country is rated as maturity level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Currently, our country, I think, as Kenya, we are around maturity level 1, basically for the reasons that there are certain gaps in the entire value chain where we do not either have the existence of the legislative or policy framework, or at the manufacturer's level, we do not have system documents and procedures according to any of the good practices that are applicable. For example, good manufacturing practices. Do we have a legal framework, the policy? Is it trickling down to the manufacturers to develop appropriate procedures to implement them? That goes for GMP, good laboratory practices, good manufacturing practices, good clinical practices, good distribution practices. And in each of the practices, there has to be a backup policy framework and a legislation that governs it, that is comparable to that of a stringent regulatory authority. The other thing that is very, very important, if you check the majority of the governments in Africa, and authoritatively I can talk about COMESA because I've had an opportunity to peep into some of their regulatory systems, the biggest thing that is missing is the implementation. They could be having very good legal system and policy framework. Systems and procedures could be probably there, but not aligned with the good practices, not aligned with the PICS guideline, not aligned with the WHO, not aligned, but they just have procedures. So we find that implementation is not there. So what is required to make a strong regulatory system is that in the country, there must exist evidence of the implementation of certain programs that are planned to implement the policy framework that is derived from the legal system. And they go further to check the results of those implementation programs. What is the effectiveness? Let's say if it was pharmacovigilance, for example, they need to see the pharmacovigilance policy as implemented in the audit outcomes and post-marketing surveillance analysis of market samples and how they compare with the release specifications of those particular molecules, which are the APIs. So basically, these 4 parameters is what define a strong regulatory system. Many countries fall short on this, and that is why we are still struggling. I was having a discussion with one of the key persons which are involved in maturity level 3 in Kenya, and we had a very candid discussion on some of the common procedures where it is a constant CAPA finding in all manufacturers. And of course, these are pointers to areas where the regulator needs to put more energy through a form of a coached compliance program, which is the number 3. Does the company have identified the weaknesses in the industry and come up with those assisted or coached programs to ensure that the regulatory outcomes move the country towards maturity level 3 and above? So basically, this is what happens. You can see that number 1 and 2, which is more policy and the procedures. The first one is the government position, how do we make our laws? The second one, we are talking about how do we align with the best industry best practices, and then the evidence of those implementations at the regulator perspective. So when we narrow down to some of the emerging issues in the regulatory environment that is much concerned that we are going to expose a little more, emerging issues like bioequivalence studies. It wasn't there for companies that were registering their products in the 90s and even early 2000s. this bioequivalence was just an academic thing that we used to read about. But now there are several emerging issues on the bioequivalence, as we are going to see. Pharmacovigilance was not something that was not really stressed long time. Now all regulatory authorities require the nitrosamine risk assessment. And ethylene glycol and ethylene glycol limits now determination. They want you to declare them in the certificate of analysis for the release of the finished pharmaceutical product. So we can see how the regulatory framework is changing to include even some of the things that were not there before, yet very significant. And if you see each one of them, they all talk about product safety and evidence that it is there. So there has to be a bioequivalence program, pharmacovigilance programs, and risk assessment must be seen at the operator level. And of course, the end product, which is finished pharmaceutical product, must declare the limits of ethylene glycol, diethylene glycol, nitrosamine. So I'm just giving these as examples of the trends that are happening in the regulatory framework that need to be identified at this time. And again, just underscore that during the training sessions, we will be able to go into finer details how you do nitrosamine risk assessment determination, how you determine the limit of detection, the limit of quantification of all the impurities that are relevant. I'll just give you an example that recently an inquiry was made to Ethiopian Food Drug Authority. And during this process, the response that the new dossier evaluations in Ethiopia now, if you submit your bioequivalence from a research organization, they require you to provide a link which they can verify the data from that particular CRO. This never used to happen before. The most regulatory authorities that were not considered stringent, they just need any bioequivalence study. They do not go to a next level to verify the source of these data integrity issues associated with this data. You also, during marketing authorization, the same Ethiopia body now is looking for pharmacovigilance data, such as periodic safety updates, which were not there before. These are PSURs are very difficult to get. And I can say that there is a link, which if you join, you can find some of the updates, but it's a paid up link. So you can see the regulatory framework is changing. It was happening in Zimbabwe before. And that's why probably in Africa, Zimbabwe is considered one of the most stringent. Now Ethiopia started. And since there is that mutual recognition between regulatory authorities, very soon you'll find Kenya also asking for evidence that for the last 5 years or 10 years, there has been no adverse events, adverse reactions reported. So this is just for us to appreciate that the regulatory framework is changing and changing rapidly. And therefore, the matters of regulatory authorities must move from a small department called RA department to a strategic level of decision-making in the companies. Now, just to highlight some of the things that must come out and as they become inputs into the regulatory dossier, some of the elements we look into details are the properties of the API, that are physicochemical properties, in this case, which includes a lot of parameters such as the particle size distribution, how you do border X-ray border diffraction, how you determine the PSD. So we are going to look at all these tools during the training. And our sites of manufacture. The route of synthesis is a very important part, a very interesting thing that if we go through it, you realize that that is where a majority of even your terminal impurities will come from. You look at it and see how the requirement for even declaring some of isomerism, polymorphism coming. Of course, we'll have an overview of specification. Those will not dwell much on those that are described in the pharmacopoeia, but there are those that are not described in the pharmacopoeia. which are very, very important part of the information that gets into the CTD format during that. In the API dossier, there'll be so many things that we look at. As I've just mentioned, the identification properties, we look at the reference standard, the impurities. For those not described in the pharmacopoeia, these days they are talking about residual solvents, residual catalysts, and all these things you have to declare them. Very interesting on the chiral chemistry, which will give you the stereochemistry. You will find a lot of stereochemistry that have go to the dossier, including polymorphism and particle size distribution. So I'm just trying to say that just giving an impetus that when the whole thing will roll down, it will be a hands-on, and people will be able to engage and see how we've been missing the critical information, so that when you get a query, a long query, you wonder where the queries came from. We'll also have a discussion on some potential and actual impurities, organic impurities, such as the byproducts that come during the synthesis pathway, the static materials and intermediates that are not reacted, the degradation products of the empire due to various conditions, the reactor conditions, and also the conditions of storage, including the reagents and catalysts. So we will see how this fits into the CTD format, because the CTD format is the most important demonstration of pharmaceutical equivalence in terms of safety. Because if there were residual solvents that were used in the terminal purification process out of limits, it means if the residual solvents, which are classified in class 1, 2, 3, and 4, class 1 and 2 are generally considered toxic. If you let these ones end up in the final product in significant levels, then of course you can see the safety parameters actually challenged. Yeah. So I just want to give us an overview and end there. And when we start the real course, we'll take a lot of time in each and every part of it. But today, just wanted to see the significance of the API quality as it contributes towards compliance of safe products, and what the regulator should do. Because right now, there should be a regulator should look at this thing and put in their programs and checklist when they go to audit an API in whatever country they have gone to. They have to have a checklist to be able to detect where there are deficiencies in all these parameters or indicators of quality, indicators of safety, indicators of efficacy, or in terms of the regulatory evaluations. So, Dr. Arbias, I would wish to go beyond that, because these are things that we're just only giving to give an overview of what is ahead. And we are just touching what needs to be of significance. Things like enantiometric purity was not an issue before, but these days they want you to give proper elucidation of the chemical structure, because they will, at the end of the day, link it with the SAR, the structure-activity relationships of the pharmaceutical principle. So for now, let me leave it at that, because I know there are colleagues. If anybody has a question, probably you can put in the chat. If I am not able to respond now, we can also respond separately.
Thank you. Thank you. What I'm noticing is most of the regulatory agencies are now becoming more and more stringent. That is very interesting.
Yes, the stringometer, let me put if such a word may exist, is determined by their capability to elucidate this kind of information and analyze them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. That was really insightful and so detailed. I believe there is more detail into it, and hope that will be that you'll take us through during the training. But I really appreciate for that effort. Colleagues, can we give warm coffee to Dr. We can give online emojis or whatever. So excellent. Thank you very much, Doc, for that. Our next speaker, I believe we have Dr. Matu. Dr. Are you there?
Yes, I'm quite sorry I'm late. Just had some technical issues with my computer. I'm able to do a presentation, but I'll have to share it on my desktop, but I have some issues with my audio. So I wanted to discuss just a rough overview of the veterinary space and the regulatory frameworks that are usually governing the registration of veterinary pharmaceuticals and biologicals, just briefly. So Armias,
Yes. You can proceed, Doc. Maybe you can start introducing yourself. Last week, maybe it was so brief, maybe others have not heard, and then you can continue, Doc.
okay. I had a presentation I wanted to share.
Okay.
And I'm kind of sorry for taking quite a bit of time. So 1 minute.
No worries, it's okay. Or even you can send it to me and I can display it from here.
Let's see. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thanks. So this
No,
is just a
now,
little bit of
continue, yes.
bio pharmacies, the bit of advice that I need. I yeah, clinical pharmacology.
Is that my network, Doc? You are breaking.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, now is okay.
Yes. So I worked in government. I used to work in Kisumu and Embu. Also worked in corporate, doing mostly regulatory and pharmacovigilance and compliance. And I've done that for now, maybe around another 11 years. We usually do a lot of compliance risk assessment, mostly for market access and supply chain planning. I've done lots of auditing pharmaceuticals, usually what you have GXP audits. I've done quality control, lots of product registration. I've been involved in a lot of projects. One is mostly with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, vaccination programs. And now I ended up on the veterinary space. And this is just to describe what it's like being a regulatory affairs specialist within the veterinary space, how it may be a little bit different from the human pharma space. And so I'll just share my screen here, and I'll just jump through my screen since there's just a lot to say. And this is just kind of selling ourselves here. So the veterinary space is usually veterinary medicine. Normally within our veterinary space in Kenya, it's usually veterinary pharmacists that are responsible for VMPs, but pharmacists have been playing that role for a very long time as well. So now we are kind of in the competitive space with vets and pharmacists. That's a very long political story, so no worries about it. In Kenya, there are guidelines, of course, within how to practice pharmacy and also how to practice the veterinary pharmacy space, and those guidelines are both within PPB and the health authority called VMD. So this is just a rough idea, a rough image of what it entails to register and license veterinary pharmacies. We have the body called VMD that usually handles like premise licenses of manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers. And then they usually have many guidelines. Like you see, we're going to discuss dossier submission of how a veterinary pharmaceutical can be different from the dossier of a veterinary pesticide, from a biological. And so that's what regulatory really is. It's just about lots of research on a day-to-day, because we change with time. A lot of our regulators keep changing, they keep evolving, they're very dynamic and very unpredictable. So the goodness is having an online platform helps the industry engage them better because they have websites now. Before, it used to take quite a long time to know what was expected of regulator of dossier submissions and compilations. We also have a regulation called the Mutual Regulation Recognition Procedure, and that's for the East African countries that you can see up here. That's Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, South Sudan, Tanzania, Rwanda. So it's kind of the same as the human pharma side, but they have their own team that works specifically for regulating VAMPs. We also will discuss a little bit of what is expected from the difference, what the difference is between a mutual recognition in East Africa compared to the global, which is now the European Union, which is also mandated to have a veterinary authority. And so there was just a regular overview we'll have about that. And this is kind of the process. We'll get into that another time. And also to look at how the US also have a drug approval process. We'll go through the basic processes of what it means for them to approve what is expected. Yes, and that was just pretty much it from my side. But just finally, in the veterinary space, usually you have 4 stages to be able to obtain a marketing authorization, which is the paperwork that helps you actually be able to promote, distribute, import products. And it's usually a pre-submission stage, which is usually the dossier preparation and gaps review according to the guidelines. We have the submission stage, which is now the submission process, which means you pay, you have submitted samples, and you now hand over the document. African countries are now moving from paper-based to what you call an online submission, which is different from ECTD, which is probably something we can talk about, because that's part of the innovative process of submitting. And then now we have the post-submission, which is really where most of the work is. It's about maintaining post-approval changes and any other area activities that may be involved. And then you obtain your MA. And these two usually can be intertwined. So when you obtain an MA, you can still need to do post-submission for life cycle changes. And so that's really, in essence, what regulatory is about. But we'll talk about it later, probably when we have a session. We can deep dive now and talk what it means to be in regulatory in the veterinary space. How is it different from the human space? What behaviors are necessary? Like, for example, you need to be very collaborative. You have to be very compliant. It's highly important, especially if you're representing a company that is big on safety, quality, and integrity. Yes, so that's pretty much very brief intro to the veterinary regulatory space.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is an excellent one. And I believe this is something we've been trying to do since last year. As you said, there is a lot of contentious area in this veterinary pharmacy practice, but as we continue building capacity of pharmacy professionals in veterinary pharmacy, in the basic treatment and management of veterinary illness, the drugs. Then now when we come in to really also look at the regulatory affairs issue, I believe that is a big practice area and a big space for pharmacy practitioners. And thank you, Dr. Matu, for representing most of, I can say, pharmacists in that big regulatory affairs space for veterinary practice. Yeah. So we are so grateful to have Dr. Matu as one of our facilitators, especially with the module on regulatory affairs. I'll try later on to list out and show everyone the whole list of modules in our training. Another speaker today is Dr. Edward. I believe Dr. He's on the call where he will talk about pharmacovigilance, post-marketing surveillance, and I'll invite him to introduce himself because I have declared I'm not good in introducing people. Dr.
So thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Edward Abuao. I am a pharmacist with more than 20 years of experience. I'm a regulatory system strengthening expert. Have a lot of interest in pharmacovigilance, post-market surveillance, clinical trials, and things regulation. So in this presentation, I know time is really gone, but I'll try to summarize it the much I can. But this is just an overview about what we plan to present during the course. And for my presentation, we look at these 5 areas very fast, a slide each. So if you can give me that time. So we all know about pharmacovigilance, which is activities related to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects of medicines or any other drug-related problem, including the ones related with vaccines, that is AEFIs, or even medical devices as was presented earlier on. So why do we need pharmacovigilance? As you know, most of the medicines that we have are mainly developed outside the country. And sometimes they do not have enough data to support the quality, the safety of some of these products. And therefore, when these medicines come into being, it is always important that we continue monitoring them for us to be able to pick some of those rare adverse events or adverse drug reactions to help and prevent them from being experienced by other patients or users. The other thing is to also help us, PV for that matter, pharmacovigilance, also helps us in identifying medication errors and taking action so that, again, we prevent them from recurring. And importantly, PV works to ensure patient safety. And we've heard about from our previous presenters that we also need to do regulatory compliance. And then if we do not have a good quality or good safe products, then people will lose confidence in the medicines that we have. And therefore, it is important that as pharmacovigilance is being implemented, then we strengthen how we do this for people to have access to safe products. So that's what we'll be looking at, but into more details. Some of these topics are very big. They can take a whole day, but you remember I only had 10 minutes, so just trying to see how fast or how, just to build your appetite for the course. The next area is post-marketing surveillance. And here we look at the quality of medicines. And it is all about monitoring the quality or safety of pharmaceutical products after they've been introduced into the market. Again, during the development of products, most of these are done under controlled environment. But when you come to the distribution and use of these products, some of these environmental or even the storage conditions have not been experienced. And therefore, it is important that we do post-market surveillance and monitor the quality of these products. And we have both active and reactive to ensure that people have access to continuous access, of quality products, and be able also to identify any substandard or falsified medicines and remove them from the market. So this information, when received, leads to regulatory actions, which are very different, very many. You can have quarantine, you can have recalls, you can have an advisory going out, or even restricting how some of these products are being used. We remember the issue of ranitidine, and I think my colleague Nelson has also mentioned things to do with nitrosamine. This is what actually led to ranitidine being removed from the market. And as regulators become more stringent, as was mentioned, then we get more resources to be able to monitor some of this. The issue of nitrosamine is not very old, but it's because as science evolves, we are able to pick some of these impurities and see how they affect even the health, the human health, some saying that leading to cancers and things like that. And therefore, PMS and PV are very important to make sure that we continuously get this information. As again was mentioned, as countries move towards attaining maturity level 3, which shows that they have a stable and well-coordinated and working regulatory systems, they invest a lot in some of these activities. As the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, there are less than around 250 staff, and therefore we depend a lot of this information coming from you. When you undertake or go through this course, you become part of the regulator by able to easily pick some of these challenges in terms of the quality or even safety of the products and reporting them to PPB where they take the necessary regulatory action. So that is one of the reasons why you need to undertake this course. The other topic very fast is the risk management plans. And these are structured plan that outlines the potential risks of medicines and what you have in place to minimize them. So this strategy looks at things like what are the possible risks that you have with the medicines, what are the known risks and what are the potential risks. So you have to document that and indicate how you're going to minimize the occurrence of these known or potential risks. You show the strategies, and this is evaluated by the regulator so that we see whether it meets what is required. Because as patients take medicines, the last expectation they have is for the medicines to harm them. They may be in need of the medicines, so it is important that even as they take the medicines, it is important so that we do not harm them more. And then the other component is the PMS, post-market monitoring and evaluation strategy that you have. So all these components are submitted in the risk management plan, and the regulator during the market authorization review that part of the document and ensures that it meets its requirements. So the impact of this is that it supports evidence-based decision making, so that you're not just shooting in the dark, but you know where to focus, and also guides in medicine safety updates and the regulatory actions. And then, so the next place that I'll talk about the issue is how do regulatory authorities respond to the safety signals that they receive from PMS, PV, and any other review that comes across. Number one is in signal detection and assessment. That is the first step that they do. So they look at the reports that are submitted from the field, be it adverse drug reactions, be it AEFIs, adverse events following immunizations, be it alerts issued by other regulatory authorities. We've heard about reliance and such like information. and even the databases that the country is part of. So they review these signals, and this can be done by the experts or even a committee that has been put in place by the regulator. Then after they do the review, they do their report, and that report again is then taken by the regulator to implement the necessary regulatory actions, again based on risk assessment. That is currently what is taking place, doing risk-based regulation, whereby you put your resources where there is the highest risk, but also not ignoring the other low risks. So if that information gives a low risk, then the regulator can require the MA, the market authorization holder, MAH, to give an update in the label or offer new precautions so that as someone is taking the medicines, they know the possible risk that that medicine can cause. If it's moderate risk, the regulator can ask for restriction in the use of the medicines or even control how it's distributed. And when you have very high risk, then the regulator can suspend the market authorization or even do a product withdrawal so that no more people get exposed to this product. Then the last step is the communication, where the risk communication is done. And this is through public alerts. I'm sure you've seen what PPB gives out. There's the DI healthcare worker, professional health worker letter, or even additional training that is given for people to be able to prevent the adverse events from being experienced. So why do we need to do this? Why do we need to strengthen the pharmacovigilance and PMS? Why do we need to do this course? Why do we need to go through this course? One is to build the capacity of the regulatory authorities, improve on the collaboration. You currently know that Africa is in the midst of setting up the Africa Medicines Agency. And shortly, I think we should be getting to hear about the CEO, because there already is a board of management or board of directors, and they're currently in the process of recruiting the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for AMA. AMA will take some of the activities that are being done by the regulatory authorities in the continent for some specific products. And if you checked today, or was it yesterday, the NEPAD, AUDA NEPAD through the AMRH, the products that the initial products that have been registered by the NEPAD, I think 5 products that are now registered and can be sold across Africa. So going forward, some of these activities will be taken up by AMA. So it is important that we start appreciating some of these activities. Then strengthening the pharmacovigilance and PMS reporting systems for us to be able to receive enough information and be able to monitor how the products are performing in the country in terms of both safety and efficacy, and of course also the quality. And then looking at combating SFs or substandard and falsified medicines, because not everyone has good intentions. There are people who are more interested in making money, and therefore they will be supplying substandard and falsified medicines in the market. So by doing this training, then we increase the number of foot soldiers who can help in monitoring this. So this is what we are looking at working together to give you more info about regulatory system and what you can do in monitoring this. So that is what I have in short, but more details will be given during the course. Thank you, and over. Back to you, MS.
Thank you very much, Doc. That was amazing and very, very excellent. I know the challenge of time, but I believe when we have the full training, you can have much of the time to cover deep. And I believe, colleagues, you have got the glimpse of what that module specifically entails. I know time is running, but we'll take a few minutes where I'll try to explain a little bit in term for regarding this training. especially with regard to the experiential training, just to give you a basic highlight. So I believe you can see my screen. So the Global Regulatory Affairs Training, which we're running in collaboration with, for now we have Lavender Light and EVA Consultancy, especially they will support the practical training. And the two webinars we had, the first one, this is on the one of the last week. I believe you have enjoyed it. And of this one, both of them are available on the PPP portal. Kindly subscribe so we'll be able to share your CPD tokens. We'll also continue the same webinar in the coming weeks, which will communicate. So basically, this course entails 3 phases. Basically, it has 3 phases. In phase one will have a total of 13 modules, and you can take time to go through these modules. In our webinars, this is what we tried to give a snapshot. Okay. So the training is done twice per week, every Tuesday and Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30. We believe we'll manage to finish in 10 weeks because we strongly believe in adult learning. Once we onboard the first cohort, we also like to listen from you, the trainees, on what modules you will be interested again to be trained. And we have such an experience where we modified, we added modules. Usually we end up in adding some modules. For example, one of the things we're thinking is the knowledge of product development, which is very fundamental. And you have heard earlier the stringent measures which Dr. Nelson was talking about. So for participants with a real knowledge gap on that area, we'll also develop and teach those modules. But basically, as per now, our plan covers the following 13 modules. We'll have modules on regulatory affairs and harmonization, dossier preparations. You can see on active pharmaceutical ingredients and finished products, clinical research. The one now Dr. Edward talked about, PMS, biologics, a medical device. So it's a whole broad concept. That is why we said once per week teaching will not really help to grasp the concept, because the way we usually plan our training, it is heavily structured. And just to show you a sample, because on top of the weekly webinars, the weekly PowerPoint, we also strongly share additional reading materials that will heavily support the learning. And allow me to share, just to display briefly, our learning management system. So we have a learning platform where all the videos, PowerPoints, and additional materials are shared. If I try to open this one, this is cohort 2 of the health supply chain management. So usually our trainings start with a pre-test just to measure the basic knowledge of all participants, then and the other materials will be uploaded. So sometimes you'll find in a week you getting additional resources. This could be publications, reading materials on top of what is being told. That is why, to help people really to understand and to have a foundational grounded knowledge, to practice something is very fundamental to have a grounded knowledge. If someone is not grounded on the basic theory concept, it is very difficult to undertake the tasks. That's why we have two times per week session so that we can cover broadly and also help answer questions. The phase 2 part is a much interesting and also a new development in the training space in regulatory affairs, especially when it comes to CPD training. We have a structured 20 days attachment. Initially, we planned 10 days, but when we looked at it and when we consult, much of learning will happen if we really extend the training. So the first 10 days, participants will be engaged in Lab and Light. so that they will have the knowledge of GMP, the pharmaceutical production process. So they will have the knowledge what goes through the CTD and the dossier. Then also they will practice in lab and allied the regulatory affairs process, the dossier preparation, and they will come into EVA consultancy now to see the whole broad scope of this regulatory practice, where they'll have the opportunity to practice on a dedicated computers on dossier compilation and everything that happens on that space. So we have a very structured plan. Are we together? Yes. Can you hear me? I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so we have a very structured plan for the experiential learning for the 10 days on each of those premises in lab and allied and at ECL, starting from day 1, day 2. Not only the plan, participants will also be given a logbook, which is both in hard copy, but preferably we prefer it on soft copy. We have a platform where they will try to write whatever they have learned on a computer on daily basis so that they will get feedback. We are not making it too academic, but we're trying to ensure that at the end of this training process, people will get value for whatever they invest. The big investment everyone will make is their time. So we really try to give the best of the training for the time invested in these 10 weeks. So the plan is after participants finish the first 5 modules, based on their convenience, they will be assigned to lab and allied as the online training moves on. So especially that harmony of the online training with the experiential training going hand in hand will really make the training to be more sound and sound. I can't wait to start and also to join, to learn more of the regulatory aspect with a number of colleagues and participants. The other thing at the beginning of the training, each participant will be given a project presentation where at the end of the training, which they will really present that work. These are the learning outcomes. I will not take time explaining this, but I will share this PowerPoint via your email so that you can go through it. This is a whole training plan. So we expect to have a total of 10 weeks plus, each 2 hours in a day for 2 days, so 4 weeks in a week, a total of 40 hours. We expect live online. We expect participants to devote a minimum of 20 hours over the 10 weeks period on self-paced learning. That is where they use that time to read articles, journals, textbooks, to be equipped with whatever been told, also to prepare for their project presentation. A minimum of 40 hours. We expect at least a dedication of 4 hours per day for 10 days. So the minimum is 40 hours. That is why, but the 20 days exposure would really make a difference in the final output. So at this point, I would love to welcome each one of you. If you have any question to ask, and also to join this training and really be a global regulatory affairs practitioners from our experience in all other trainings we rolled out. The feedback shows we are so committed in training. That is why we always say we are your trusted partner in professional development. And I singularly welcome each one of you to join this training. The whole training package will be available on your browser, on learning platform, and also on the mobile application. Yeah, I will stop at this point to answer if there is any question. You are so welcome. For participants outside Kenya, the training is still open. It's a global training. So we can have a case-by-case discussion, a one-to-one discussion. You can write us email, you can send us a chat, and then we can be able to answer and personalize the training to your needs. I'm sharing our website link on the chat, and also you can join our WhatsApp community for regular updates. Any question? You can, if there's any question, feel free to unmute and ask. I've not seen any question in the chat. Yes, any question or comment or feedback are highly welcome. And also, I thank you, all our presenters today, Dr. Edward, Dr. Matu, Dr. Nelson Odhiambo, and also Dr. Maureen Giro for the bright and very engaging presentation you shared. I will share the PowerPoints to everyone, including the recording and the CPD tokens. You'll get it on your email. I'll wait a few minutes if there is any question to respond, but feel free to chat, to ask. I'll drop my mobile number in the chat so that you can even personally reach out to me and ask if you have any concern, any wish. I know this is a very interesting area to practice, and I believe most of you will join, and this will be a good area for practice here.